Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. Recently, during a visit to Key West, Florida, I took the time to stop in at the Little White House Museum. This is a house where Harry Truman used to vacation when he was president. In one of the rooms, there was an interesting table, and here it is. It was a round poker table set up for 7 players with interesting chip holders made out of solid mahogany. And it was made by one of the sailors at the Navy base on Key West. Now, over the years, poker has gone in and out of popularity. Right now, it's very hot. So today, we're going to build an 8-player poker table right here in the new Yankee Workshop.
$2 ante, and it's going to be 234 progressive bet on the raise.
God, where did all the money go?
So you're back. 50 cents. Did you mean $50? No.
Don't take that from him. Bust him.
Pass the betting to Big Chris over there.
I fold my hand.
Welcome to the every other Tuesday night poker game. These fellas have been getting together for about 7 years now. Let's see what's going on. Hey fellas, mind if I interrupt?
No, what's up?
Now, we're not so much interested in the game that you're going to be playing. I'm interested in the table that you're playing on. Now, a proper poker table is supposed to be felt. Where's the felt?
Right, I don't know.
Really?
I've never really thought about felt before. I've been thinking about losing my money.
Where are the cup holders in the corners for your drinks? I mean, you can't have the drink in the middle of the table.
Thank you. Some of us don't drink, and I've never heard of cup holders on it.
And you need a tray here to rake in all those chips when you win.
I rarely win, so, but it's...
Bruce, I'm a little disappointed in you.
How come?
Well, you deserve to play on a better table than this.
Hey man, you just work with what you got.
Well, play on. We had no idea how popular the game of poker was when we started thinking about this project. There are TV shows, there are numerous websites on how to play the game and how to build all different kinds of tables. And after doing a lot of research, this is what we came up with. An octagon table, so up to 8 people can sit and play. Padded chip holder areas, cup holders which will hold a can of soda, and a nice padded playing surface. Now I built ours out of mahogany, and it sits up on a nice sturdy pedestal. And in fact, the top of the table can be removed from the pedestal to move into tight places. So if you'd like to build your own poker table, a measure drawing is available with a materials list, even with the sources of where we got our accessories, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. Now the table starts with a substrate onto which everything is built, and it's a piece of 3/4 inch MDF, cut 47 inches square. The success of this project is to have all 8 sides of the octagon equal. So for this 47 3/8 inch piece, I calculated that I have to clip off 13 7/8 on each corner. So I made this stick. I make a mark from both directions on each corner. Then I take this straight edge, align those 2 marks, and draw a line on the back side. Now this straight edge is set up to be equal to the distance from the edge of the shoe to the inside edge of the saw blade. So if I move the straight edge over and clamp it, just covering that line, I'll have a guide to make the cut exactly in the place I want. Now before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Here we have as perfect an octagon as I can cut. Here's a sample of mahogany veneer plywood that I'm going to wrap the octagon with. I've cut a dado in it so that it can slip over the MDF. Now to cut that dado, I've set up the stacked dado head cutter. I have 4 pieces of plywood that I want to run through. When it comes time to join these pieces, I want to make sure I cut the angle very accurately. On an octagon, the cut is always going to be 22.5 degrees. All 8 pieces should be exactly the same size, but I'm going to cut them individually just to make sure they fit right. All right, there's 22.5 on one end. Slide it down to my stop. And now I'm going to swing the saw to 22.5 degrees on the other side of 0, and that will minimize any tear out on the face of the plywood. Now I use a little bit of glue in the dado and on the cuts. Slip it in there. Give it a tap in. Now for the nails I'm going to use, I want to conceal as many fasteners as possible. So I'm going to take and use my brad nailer and start low here and angle up. Now that will be covered later by this piece of half-round molding. Now I want to build 8 boxes to hold the chips. It starts out as 1/2-inch thick stock. I ran a bead on the top edge, which will be a nice detail, and the corners will be mitered when it's assembled. We'll run the bead first. I've installed a 5/16" diameter bead bit in the router, and I've installed a feather board to keep the stock down as it passes by the bit. With that beaded stock, I've made one of the boxes. It's going to sit in the table like this. The corners are carefully mitered, and it's assembled with glue and brads, and these nails won't show. Because I have 8 of these to assemble, and it's hard to hold all those pieces when you nail them, I made a little jig. This piece of wood is exactly the same size as the inside of the box. Then I have some stops, so I slip this piece in first, then one of the short ones on this end, another one on this end, and finally this long piece. And when they're all aligned, I'll nail them together. I'm using this dark glue so that it won't show so much. Six more to go. With the boxes completed, I'll now turn to the outer top rail. It's going to sit right on the plywood like that and butt up against the box. It's a cove and a half-round with a rabbet. I've installed a cove and bead bit here at the router table, and as you can see, it'll make the cove and half of the half-round. I'm starting out with some wide stock. I'm going to mill each edge, and I've installed a feather board to keep it down to the table. Now with a couple adjustments and lowering the same bit, I can complete the half-round. Okay, that's the rabbet on one edge. I'll run another rabbet, then rip the pieces in half, and that'll be 2 of the 8 pieces we need. Just as with the plywood pieces that wrap the base, I'm cutting the pieces at 22.5 degrees, putting some glue on the rabbet and in the joint, and I'm going to hold it in place with some clamps until the glue dries. No fasteners. At this point, I can begin to install the boxes. Glue on the bottom and where it meets the outer rail, and I put some marks so that it'll be perfectly centered, and some more spring clamps, no fasteners, to hold it in place while the glue sets. Well, as I always say, you can never have enough clamps. We'll let this dry for a while and turn our attention to the pedestal. If I tip the table up, you can see that it is also in the shape of an octagon. The outer layer is mahogany plywood, and if you had x-ray eyes, you'd see that there's another octagon inside this that's wrapped with the mahogany. The inner core is made out of birch plywood, and what I want to do is cut 8 identical strips like this that are beveled on each edge at 22.5 degrees. So I've taken some wider strips and beveled one edge with the saw at 22.5 degrees. Now I've set my fence, and I'll rip the strips. To assemble the octagon, I spread glue along the bevel, and then I bring the 2 pieces together, a little bit tricky, making sure I keep the outer edges absolutely flush, and then I'll secure it with some brads. To make sure I have a perfect octagon, I've cut some octagon-shaped pieces that I'm just going to tap into each end. Now we'll get everything aligned. I'll put clamps on as necessary and set this aside to dry. While everything's drying, let's start working on these cup holders. There's a hole cut in this mahogany piece, but also a hole cut in the MDF base. I want to do that now. To make the holes, I'm going to use a hole saw, 2 3/4 inch diameter. I've located the center of the hole, which is centered between the boxes in both directions. Now it's just a matter of drilling it through. Right, there it is. Now I want to cut a piece that'll fit between the two boxes and the rail, and it will have a hole in it eventually for the cup holder. It'll be shaped something like this. What I'm going to do is take a piece of plywood, make sure the grain is running across this way, and clip each corner at 22.5 degrees so it fits this rail. And I put a mark in the center of that side. That's one. First thing I want to do is check the cut that I just made, make sure it aligns up with both sides of the rail, and that seems pretty good. I've also put a couple pencil marks here that represent the outside of the box. And I want to mark those, and I'll cut them leaving the line. Now let's see how we're doing. Well, as I expected, it's still a little bit long. So I just want to take a skosh off of each side. It's a lot easier to trim a little bit at a time, because if I trim too much, I have to start over again. All right, after trimming just a little bit off a couple more times, nice snug fit, that's pretty good. Now before I leave tonight, I think I'll fit all of these. Well, good morning. Last night I did complete fitting all these individual blocks. The next thing I have to do is trim the inside corner so it's flush with each box and drill a hole for the cup holder. Here at my drill press, I built a stop system to locate the hole exactly, and I'm using the same hole saw I used to drill through the MDF. Using my bandsaw with the rip fence, I can get nice, straight cuts. I'll make this cut first, then move the fence to the other side and complete the cutout. Now I'm going to glue and brad these little pieces of plywood that'll act as supports for the cup holder. No nails on this piece, just glue. I don't want to have to deal with filling nail holes. I just set it in position, carefully tap it down, and wipe off any excess glue. Now it's time to wrap that inner core we made yesterday with some mahogany plywood. Now I pre-stained these pieces last night before I left, because when I assemble this, if any glue were to get on the raw mahogany, it would show later. This way it won't be a problem. For the last several minutes, I've carefully fitted all the mahogany pieces of plywood around the base octagon, and the joints are just the way I like them. I've held it in place with clamps. I'm removing one at a time, putting a little glue along the edge and a little bit of glue on the interior base. I'll clamp them back in position one at a time, and hopefully I won't need any mechanical fasteners. These band clamps come in real handy when we're trying to clamp something like this together. And look, no fasteners. Just taking a piece of 1/2-inch stock and using a 1/2 round bit rounded over each edge. I'm going to rip 2 pieces of molding. I'll show you where those go. Now this little half round goes right even with the bottom edge. And the corners are mitered again at 22.5. There's really no way to avoid a few nails here. I've placed the prototype up on the work table so you could get a closer look at the base. It starts out as a piece of mahogany veneer plywood cut in the shape of an octagon, and then it's trimmed around the edge with solid mahogany. I want to round over the top edge with a 1-inch radius and the bottom edge with a 1/4-inch radius. Now here's a piece of 1.5-inch square stock, and I've installed a 1-inch radius bit to run the top edge. Now I've switched over to a 1/4-inch radius to round off that lower corner. Now I'm forming a rabbet so that the base can sit right on top of it, gives it lots of support and plenty of glue surface area. All right, with the corners cut at 22.5 again, I like to use a little glue and as few nails as possible. Now I've tipped the base up so you can see under it, and the next thing I want to do is install these wooden pads with these threaded inserts for the levelers. Now with a hole drilled for the threaded insert, I'm just going to glue and nail these to the underside. All right, here's the insert. It actually has threads on the outside as well. Start it with a tap and use a screwdriver to set it in. Now I just thread in the leveling foot, and that's all there is to it. Here's how we attach the base to the column. First I'm going to take this block, which I've laid out to be right in the center of the base, and attach that with some brads. Now I'm going to flip that over and see if I can enter it into the existing octagon down below. Now I'm just drilling and attaching the column with some screws. Now I want to run another 1/4 round, this time a 3/4-inch radius. This piece of 3/4-inch MDF is going to go on top of the column. It's actually going to end up under the table. But what I've done is taken it and centered it on the table with these sticks. I've already drilled some holes through this piece for these connector bolts, which will allow you to take the table apart if necessary. I want to complete those holes with my hand drill. Then I'll know they're all aligned. Now I'm going to glue and attach another centering block, and then we'll be able to install this on the top of the column. Okay, this is going to drop in like that, and we'll attach it with screws, just as we did with the bottom of the pedestal. Well, here I'm starting to build the substrate for the playing surface, a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, and on the underside I'm nailing on these 1 3/8 strips, which are going to elevate it to the right height. Now I'm ready to cover the playing surface, and it starts with a piece of 1/4-inch closed cell foam that I picked up at a local upholstery shop. You can also order it over the internet. I'm spraying on a contact adhesive. I'll spray it on both pieces and then we'll bond them together. I oversized the foam by a couple inches and drop it on. Make sure there are no air bubbles, and then I'll trim it off. The plywood substrate for the playing surface is about a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch smaller than the opening in the table. I want the foam to stick over the edge an 1/8 of an inch, so I cut these little strips as a guide as I run my utility knife along the edge. Now here I've cut a piece of felt oversized with the good side facing down, and I'm applying the same adhesive I used to attach the foam. Once again, a coat on each surface, and then we'll bond them together. All right, now what I've done is just rolled it on the edge here. I'm reaching underneath, and I can feel it, just trying to get the wrinkles out. I don't want to go too fast. Now the fabric I got on a website that specializes in poker supplies. Now the key here is that I want to get any wrinkles out now. It's going to be impossible later, so I'm just slowly working along, bonding it down, watching out for any wrinkles. Now these staples are going to hold the fabric to the frame under the substrate, and what I'm trying to do is just roll the edge. If you see I pull on it a little bit, it just rounds over that edge. That's all I want. Now let's see how it fits. It's going to be a little snug, which is what I want. Just push it down in the opening. That's good. And the playing surface is about 1/8 of an inch above the table. Perfect. Now we'll remove this and take the piece into the finishing room. Well, the first step in our multi-step finish for the poker table is going to be to apply an oil-based stain. Happens to be mahogany in color. We put a coat on all the visible surfaces. We'll let it set for a bit, and then we'll wipe off the excess. Once the stain dried, I applied some wax-free shellac, and then hit that with some 4-0 steel wool. Now I'm applying a dark mahogany gel stain, and that'll even out all the various colors. Lay it on almost like paint. I don't want to let it set too long, and then I'll wipe off the excess. Here I'm wiping it off, and the idea is not to wipe all of it off, just get it blended so that it's nice and even. Once the gel stain dries, I can apply several coats of a wipe-on polyurethane. And when that's done, I can install the cup holders and put the felt back in and assemble the table. You know, when that's all done, I got half a mind to take this over to those poker players and see how they feel playing on a real poker table.
Rick, $50 to you.
Couple of nines. I will bet another 50.
I'm gonna have to bet it $2.
When Jacob does that, that's silly.
Stay right there.
All right, fellas, now that you've had a chance to play a couple hands on our new table, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's beyond us. I mean, it's way too pro.
I want to test out the chip capacity.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried that.
What is the chip capacity?
All right, look, first of all, it doesn't rock like our old one.
That's
Hold
good.
enough of
It doesn't have that sort of slimy feel like our old one, and it doesn't smell like our old one.
Good, all good
Does
news.
it come with a waitress?
Oh, that
No,
was-
no
that was
waitress.
Jacob. Sorry, pal.
But you know, if you actually want to build one of your own, we have a plan and a DVD available.
We'll take this one.
No, we'll just take, yeah, why build one?
Can we trade in? What's the trade-in value?
Trade that in? I don't think so. I'll tell you what, I'll let you play one more hand, and then I'm taking this baby back to the workshop.
Oh, no.
Well, I had all I could do to get that poker table back from those guys last night, but I won the last hand, so they let me take it home. Now, let me show you what we're going to build next time. We call it the new Yankee shop clock, made out of black walnut. It features our well-known New Yankee Workshop logo, and we'll show you how to build it next time, right here in the New Yankee Workshop.
If you've enjoyed this New Yankee project, you may want to try some of the others. There are projects meant for the workshop, the garden, the kitchen, and many more. So whether you're a fan of shaker style, or colonial, arts and crafts, or Chippendale, there may be a Norm project you'd like to build. Whether it's a clock or a gazebo, a picnic bench or a Windsor chair, a child's toy or a sailboat, visit the New Yankee website at www.newyankee.com for a complete listing.